There's a big difference between finding something ancient and actually understanding it. Whether we're talking about a tiny artifact or a whole ancient settlement, our understanding depends on the skills and knowledge of historians, archaeologists, and scientists. And there are times when they all come up short. Whenever that happens, we're left with a mystery. And we have some great mysteries for you in this video. Could a mosaic floor in Edmond, Oklahoma, rewrite the history of North America? There's only one way to find out, so let's look at it. The floor, which was discovered in 1969, is peppered with holes that have been interpreted by archaeologists as post holes, into which wooden beams would once have been inserted. It was originally found by construction workers, but it wasn't until professional archaeologists arrived at the scene that the mystery truly began. According to the evidence, this mosaic floor is close to 200,000 years old. That ought to be impossible. In fact, it's so impossible that some scientists refuse to acknowledge it. While they acknowledge that it looks like a mosaic floor, they insist that this is a natural formation, and we only see a mosaic pattern when we look at it because that's what we want to see. However, those same scientists are unable to explain how and why nature inserted perfect post holes into their natural rock formation. Human life, as we currently acknowledge it, didn't exist 200,000 years ago. So if this structure is artificial, we'd love to know who made it. The country of Benin that exists in Africa today can trace its roots back to the Kingdom of Benin, which was founded during the 12th century. Archaeologists know it best for the famous Benin bronzes, but that might be because they don't fully understand the other great archaeological discovery that's been made there. We're talking about the Benin Walls. There are some historians who believe these enormous walls should be compared to the Great Wall of China, but sadly, they're not looking their best here in the 21st century. The walls were extensively damaged during the British invasion of Benin many centuries ago, and have suffered even further damage through farming, building work, and other conflicts since then. Nobody knows when the walls were built, but they might go all the way back to the reign of King Iware in the 1180s. Measured end to end, the walls are 4 times longer than the Great Wall of China, and required more building material than the Pyramid of Cheops. They're one of the most astonishing feats of construction in the ancient world, yet we know almost nothing about them. Most people have never even heard of them. There are hundreds of interesting stone monuments in Indonesia, and most of them haven't been studied as much as they should be. We'd put the Lor Lindu megaliths on Sulawesi pretty close to the top of that list. You'll find these carved stone monuments scattered all over the Bada Valley, contained within the Lor Lindu National Park. It's thought that Sulawesi was first inhabited over 40,000 years ago, and that the island was once part of a land bridge that led to Australia and New Guinea, and allowed the human settlement of both places. Most present-day occupants of the island are descended from the Bugis people, who arrived here roughly 4,000 years ago. Not much is known from the people who lived here before the Bugis, which is a problem for archaeologists because it was those pre-Bugis people who made these monuments. They left around 400 megaliths behind, 30 of which are human-shaped figures called archa-menhirs. Their purpose is unknown. Locals connect the statues to a goddess called Pahit Lida, who turns sinners into stone. But that's a case of them placing their beliefs onto artifacts created by another culture. It's no wonder that some people refer to Bada Valley as an alien valley. Speaking of ancient artifacts that look like aliens, let's take some time to talk about the stone statues that have been found in and around Lake Cuitzeo in Mexico. So many of them look like the classic science fiction depiction of an alien with big black eyes and an elongated gray head that it becomes almost impossible to write the resemblance off as a coincidence. An enormous amount of work went into the creation of these sculptures. Many of them are made of obsidian, which is one of the hardest forms of rock to work with. Making such detailed, intricate sculptures out of obsidian would be a difficult assignment for a master craftsperson today, so we have no idea how the craftspeople of the ancient world managed it. In fact, some scientists don't believe that the statues have anything to do with ancient craftspeople at all. It's almost impossible to obtain an accurate date for an artifact that's made from stone. So although it's often claimed that these sculptures were taken from ancient graves around Lake Kutseo, it can't be proven that there's anything ancient about them at all. What do you think? Are they a modern hoax or an ancient wonder? Oslo, Norway's capital city, has existed since the medieval era. That means there are plenty of artifacts buried beneath the modern city for archaeologists to find. In December 2021, they came across this small but perfectly formed carved figurine, which depicts a person with a falcon. The figurine was carved during the 13th century and clearly depicts an individual wearing a crown. But there's a question about it that the experts haven't yet been able to answer. Is the figure a representation of a king or a representation of a queen? The person has a smiling face, so they're presumably a happy monarch, but their shape and clothing is androgynous. Even the presence of the falcon doesn't help us, as women were also falconers during the 13th century. And the bird doesn't have any gender-specific significance. The artifact is the oldest visual reference to falconry in the history of Scandinavia, which makes it significant. But it would be nice to know who it's supposed to represent. Perhaps King Håkon Håkonsson, who ruled between 1217 and 1263 and had a keen interest in falconry, is the most likely candidate. It's also possible, but not proven, that the figurine is a knife handle. Karahan Tepe in the Sanliurfa province of Anatolia, Turkey, is often described as the sister site of the more famous Göbekli Tepe, and with good reason. The sophistication of this ancient site perfectly illustrates the resourcefulness and ingenuity of the Neolithic people who once called this area home. It's about 11,400 years old and contains 250 individual monoliths along with countless stone carvings and designs. One of them, a three-dimensional portrayal of a human head, is considered among the most outstanding works of sculpture in the ancient world. The site was discovered relatively recently and is still only partially excavated. By the time it's fully excavated, it might even be considered superior to its sister site. As of December 2021, it's thought that the alignment of Karahan Tepe might be related to both the winter and summer solstices. 11,000 years ago, the Milky Way would have appeared as a perfectly vertical line above the portal stone on the morning of the summer solstice, whereas on the winter solstice, the light would specifically illuminate the human head carving before any other stone. This positioning was surely deliberate, even if we can't imagine the reasons why. If you're a seasoned citizen of the internet, you'll probably remember the famous picture of Kim Kardashian's backside, which quote-unquote broke the internet in 2014. It was a striking look, but it was also a very old one. In fact, it seems that the world's most famous reality television star was copying the pose of a Russian Venus statue that was made more than 23,000 years ago. The Big Booty Venus is just 2 inches tall and was discovered in Siberia in April 2017. It's carved from a single chunk of woolly mammoth tusk. According to Dr. Konstantin Gavrilov, who was in charge of the archaeological dig that turned up the tiny figurine, it would be more appropriate to compare its appearance to Danae, a figure from Greek mythology. Still, though, we suspect it's the Kim Kardashian comparison that will stick in the minds of most people who see it. The ancient residents of Siberia obviously had no idea who Kim Kardashian was, so it's likely that the generously proportioned figurine was intended to be a fertility doll. We're heading back to the Norwegian capital city Oslo now for a discovery that took place in December 2021. There, in the city's medieval park, archaeologists found 2 striking examples of ancient Norse runic text etched into 2 artifacts. The first is an inscription made on a piece of bone known as a rune stick, and the other is on an ancient piece of wood. The wood is especially interesting because it's inscribed on 3 sides, both in Norse and Latin. The inscriptions on the wooden artifact are difficult to decipher because of water damage, but the words Manus Domine and Som Det can be made out. That makes it highly likely that the full inscription was In Manus Tuas Domine Commendu Spiritum Meum, which you'll have heard translated into English as Into your hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit. The inscription on the bone is harder to understand. It's made up of 13 characters and might be either someone's personal name or a nickname. It may have been etched by someone who was learning to write, or by someone who simply wanted to let everybody else know that the bone belonged to them. In February 2022, archaeologists in Peru found nearly 200 human spines delicately threaded onto reed posts in the country's Chincha Valley area. Peru is a country of ancient wonders, and archaeologists are used to coming across the unexpected there. But this is a bizarre find even by Peruvian standards. At first, the experts at the scene thought that the spines on posts were erected by the people of the Chincha Kingdom, which existed here from the 11th century to the 15th, before being amalgamated into the Inca Empire. However, the spines have been tested and proven to come from the 16th century. Inca rule was ending by then, and European colonization had begun. Rather than being mounted as a warning, though, it's possible that the spines may have been mounted as a way of remembering the dead. In the Andes, where Europeans looted the graves of the dead for their gold and silver grave goods, natives sometimes made new ritual objects from whatever was left after the Europeans finished desecrating the graves and left. The same could have happened here. No matter what the reasons for it, it's a gruesome spectacle to behold. You've probably heard of Egypt's famous Valley of the Kings, but as of 2022, we can also state that Siberia has a Valley of the Kings. This discovery, which includes a burial mound rich with artifacts that was sealed up 2,500 years ago, has elated archaeologists in the area. The site, which is located in the Chingite region, is linked to the nomadic Scythian culture, which first roamed these territories 2,900 years ago. The most famous of the burial mounds holds the bones of a woman who was buried with a magnificent and unique golden pectoral adornment that archaeologists have never seen before. It's been suggested that she was a queen, but no proof has been found. The crescent-shaped ornament hung from her neck, an arrow shaft, an ice axe handle, a wooden comb, a bronze mirror, and a leather belt were also buried alongside her. Objects like these have previously been discovered in Scythian cemeteries, but they are usually reserved for men's tombs. The other burial mounds that have been uncovered and researched thus far show traces of a possible royal presence, earning the site's moniker Valley of the Kings. Let's go to the UK for a stunning Roman-era discovery. This wooden figurine was found during an archaeological dig ahead of the construction of the new high-speed HS2 rail network, which will run through the site of the discovery at Three Bridge Mill in Twyford, Buckinghamshire. Radiocarbon dating indicates that it was made somewhere between the years 43 and 70 in the 1st century. Wooden artifacts like this would have rotted away centuries ago under normal circumstances, but in this case, the figurine was protected from that because it was buried under layers of anaerobic clay. Even so, it hasn't quite survived the passage of time without incurring damage. The arms of the figurine are gone, as are the feet, but much of the impressive detailing is still visible, including lines on the tunic and what might even be individual hairs on the calves. Experts are divided on whether the figure has a bouffant hairstyle or whether it's wearing a hat. They're also unsure whether it was buried as a votive offering, which is a gift given to the gods in the hope that they'll bring good fortune, or whether it was intended to be placed in a grave. Although various historical records refer to the existence of birch bark letters, their existence was largely thought to be a myth until archaeologists discovered a collection of them in Veliki Novgorod, Russia in late 2021. The discovery was made inside the remains of a 15th century estate that's proven to be a rich hunting ground for archaeologists. Experts there have found wooden dishes, fishing nets, and even leather shoes. But the birch bark letters are easily the most fascinating of the finds, and seem to predate the artifacts discovered around them. Some of them have been dated to the 13th century, but a few date back all the way to the 12th. The letters are from a variety of authors and cover a variety of topics. In one of them, somebody called Dobroshu is asked to make immediate payment for an invoice for unspecified services. In another, a child of no more than 8 years old seems to be practicing the alphabet and has covered the page with illustrations. Taken all together, the finds seem to point to the idea of these ancient East Slavs having a greater degree of literacy across the population than we previously imagined. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!